Hello everyone, Tom with Capo Fetish. Let's talk about some unsung albums from 1978. Let's start off here with a great second album by this band. By their third album, they became global superstars, but they were still kind of under the radar. They were getting a lot of airplay on like K-Rock. K-Rock, of all stations, was playing this band before other stations like KMET, KLOS, like mainstream rock radios. I'm talking about the second album from Tom Petty, You're Gonna Get It. I love his first two albums. The two albums before, Damn the Torpedoes, the self-titled, and this one especially. Now, a few songs did get some substantial airplay. I Need to Know. You've got Listen to Her Heart, but there's some really great deep tracks on here. When the Time Comes, Hurt, the song Magnolia, Too Much Ain't Enough, Baby's a Rock and Roller, Inside 2. You got a song called No Second Thoughts, Restless. It's a really, really solid album that no one really talks about in the Petty discography. And I think it clocks in just a little bit, just a little over 30 minutes. So it's one of those great, just quick listens, gets to the point. It's infectious. There's great tracks, kind of borderlines power pop at times. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, his second album, You're Gonna Get It, from 1978. How about the reunion album between Brian Auger, Hammond B3 extraordinary Brian Auger, and powerhouse vocalist Julie Driscoll, now known at this point as Julie Tippetts. Their album called Encore from 78 is a near perfect classic album. What really, really makes this album soar are the covers they choose and how they kind of, these covers they do just kind of transcend the original covers. First off, there's a song on here. When this video is over, you have to pull this track up. It's called The Rope Ladder to the Moon. It was originally recorded and written by Jack Bruce of Cream, but this one just smokes that original version. Her powerhouse vocals and Auger's Hammond B3 organ. I mean, this is just a life-affirming track. Rope Ladder to the Moon is one of the highlights of this album. The album is also bookended by two Al Jarreau tracks, one called Spirit. It starts off side one. Another one that ends the album called Lock All the Gates, which is really powerful. Another great track is called Nothing Will Be As It Was, sung by Brian Auger, real kind of poppy, jazzy kind of thing. They do a cover version of No Time to Live, the song that was featured on Traffic's second self-titled album from 1968, written by Steve Winwood and Jim Capaldi. Their version of No Time to Live is incredible, transcends the original. Another great cover on here is Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. Other great tracks like Freedom Highway, Future Pilot. This is an absolute near perfect album, bordering on masterpiece. So this was the album. This was the reunion album, one of their last collaborations, which is an absolute masterpiece from 1969. Up until this album was the album Street Noise. It was a double album released in 69. Features just an array of tracks featuring like kind of like jazz rock, rhythm and blues, soul, gospel. If you've never heard the album Street Noise, you must hear it. It's one of the most unsung albums from the 1960s, from 1969. But this reunion album here in 78 is really right. It's like it just takes off right from the Street Noise period. And it's an absolute gem of an album. So if you've never heard this album, check it out. And when the video is over, like I said, pull up Rope Ladder to the Moon. It's a song that just soars and will make your day. It's an incredible track. Encore by Brian Auger and Julie Tippetts, also known as Julie Driscoll. How about the second album from Blondie? This is a real gem too. Plastic Letters. This album came out right the same year, right before their breakthrough album Parallel Lines, which had Heart of Glass, One Way or Another, Hanging Up the Telephone. This album kind of sets that album right up with really great tracks like Denise. You've got I'm Always Touched by Your Presence, Dear. I Didn't Have the Nerve to Say No, Love at the Pier, No Imagination. This is a really solid record. No one really talks about it. A couple of these songs were featured on the Blondie's Greatest Hits album that was released back in the, I think, early to mid-'80s. But a solid album. So they had the self-titled Blondie album, they had Plastic Letters, and then they had Parallel Lines, and then they became a global phenomenon. So another one here from 78, and really a really nice unknown, I wouldn't say unknown, I'd say overlooked gem. Plastic Letters from Blondie. Having an outstanding jazz fusion prog album from the Canterbury scene. This is National Health's debut album, self-titled. Now, several members of this band were in the band Hatfield in the North. I've mentioned them several times on the channel, especially the album The Rotters Club. It's one of my all-time favorite albums. This album has several members, such as Dave Stewart, who is in Hatfield of the North on organ, electric, and acoustic piano. You've got Phil Miller on guitar, just an incredible guitarist. I mean, he's just all over those two Hatfield in the North albums, just playing just incredible guitar. You've got Pip Pyle on drums, another just legendary musician. And then you've got Amanda Parsons on a couple of tracks on vocals. She sung on the song Mumps with two other female backup singers, which lifts that song up on the Rotters Club Hatfield in the North album. But this is just kind of continuing where Hatfield in the North left off with the Rotters Club. There's some really amazing, like, instrumental sections of this album that are just incredible, like the track Elephants. So if you're into some really good jazz, fusion, prog from the Canterbury scene, this is a great debut here. National Health from 1978. Singer-songwriter Wendy Waldman. Here's another really unsung singer-songwriter. She wrote a lot of hits later on after her solo career for other artists like Kim Carnes, Crystal Gale, Kenny Rogers, Cher. But her first 5 albums on the Warner Brothers albums never really got a lot of attention. And I mentioned one of her albums in another video called The Main Refrain from 1976, which is just an absolute unsung gem. Here's another one from 1978 called Strange Company. I believe this was her last album on Warner Brothers. This too, just another just fantastic singer-songwriter album. I was just listening to this. And the first track, Fool to Let Him Slip Away, is great. The title track, Strange Company, is amazing. If you've never heard Wendy Waldman, pull up some of her albums online. I think she has a best of that. I think it's one of the only albums of hers that are still in print. It's like a best of that Warner's put out on their archive label back in the late 90s, I believe. But check out this album, Strange Company, and The Main Refrain. And there's like 3 other ones from 73 to 78 that are all really solid albums. So Wendy Waldman, Strange Company from 1978. Now, I think this band should have quit. I think this would have been a graceful way to end their career if they had just stopped at this particular album. This is an album by this band that's not really talked about much, but I think the first side of this album is absolutely stellar. I'm talking about Who Are You by The Who. I love The Who I love the Keith Moon period. I think they should have stopped after this album. I think Face Dances and It's Hard could have been just Townsend's solo albums, or he could have taken songs from those albums and made a really strong solo album, like Empty Glass. But I think they should just stopped after Moon. How can you continue without Keith Moon, right? I mean, really. And then they continued even without John Entwistle, which was mind-blowing years later. But anyway, I always thought the first song, New Song, kicks ass. It kind of has that old Who kind of power. 2 excellent tracks by John Entwistle, New Song and 905. Had Enough and 905 by John Entwistle are really strong Entwistle tracks. Sister Disco and Music Must Change. That first side, I think, is just really strong. The second side I don't like as much. The title track, I've heard way too much. I never need to hear Who Are You again. I like Trick of the Light and Guitar and Pen, but I think Love Is Coming Down is a little schmaltzy for The Who. Never really liked that track, but I think it's a fine way to go out. So as far as Keith Moon goes, the Keith Moon era, they should have just stopped after this, and I think they would have, they would have done fine over the years, solo and all that. But the Who Are You album by The Who is, I think, an unsung gem in their catalog. So anyway, Who Are You from 78. I'm going to hold this album up again. I've mentioned this album maybe a couple times over the past years, but I have to mention it again because it's so fucking incredible, this album. I think it's one of the greatest singer-songwriter albums of the 70s. No one ever talks about it. It's Bruce Cockburn. The album's called Further Adventures of, and there is just not a bad moment on this album. His guitar playing, the melodies, and just the arrangements, orchestration of everything going on in these tracks is just absolutely stellar. Songs like the first track, Rainfall, a Montreal song. The second side is unbelievably good. Laughter, Bright Sky, Feast of Fools, Can I Go With You is an amazing track. If you've never heard this album, you must pull this up. Of all the Bruce Cockburn albums I've listened to, I have about a half a dozen of his, and he has a ton more. This one here really, really stands out for me as just an amazing album. I remember hearing this back in 1978 when my brother brought it home at one point to just kind of showcase for me and my sisters, and we all were just blown away by it. So Bruce Cockburn, The Further Adventures of, from 1978. You must hear this album if you're into good singer-songwriter material. Here's a band I saw open for the Kinks on their Misfits tour in 1978. They kind of remind me of that kind of music, that kind of bar band music, like, what is it, the Simon Townsend band that did Smoke from a Distant Fire. The band is called Charlie. They had all these models on their covers. And I remember buying this album after I saw the Misfits tour. And there was a song in here that got a little bit of airplay called She Loves to Be in Love. Really good stuff. And the whole first side, I think, is really strong. No More Heartache, Life's So Cruel, Watching TV, Out of Control. Yeah, kind of just like a bar band. A lot of those bands in this kind of period in the late 70s. Pretty damn good album. Charlie Lines from 1978. And I must preach one last time the Gospel of American Prayer by Jim Morrison and the Doors. I know I've mentioned this many times, but I must one more time because it's such a great headphone listen. If you're into demented poetry, unintended humor, really cool, like little low-key background jazz fusion by Densmore and Krieger and Manzarek. And then thrown in like a really stellar version of Roadhouse Blues right in the middle of the album with some great chatter between the audience and Jim Morrison. This is the album for you. I mean, it's just, a lot of people complain that they don't understand this album or why did they do this? It's just a bad posthumous release. It desecrates Jim Morrison's memory. I don't believe it at all. I think this is really well put together between the poetry he's reciting and how the Doors music kind of comes in. It just fits perfect. Everything just kind of fits in perfect. I think the way it was assembled and curated was incredible. So again, American Prayer by the Doors, Jim Morrison. I think this album is fantastic. It's one of my most listened to albums on a regular basis. You know, I feel like just kicking back and just having that kind of weird, strange vibe. This is the album for me right here. American Prayer by the Doors from 78. If you have any more unsung albums you feel need to be in this list, let me know in the comments section. As always, thanks for watching. If you dig the content across this channel, press subscribe. It costs $0. It costs nothing. It would help out. And we will see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.